The border between Canada and the United States stretches quietly across forests, lakes, and open plains, barely marked in many places, almost invisible against the vast northern landscape. Yet beneath that understated line lies a cultural divide that often escapes dramatic headlines. Many Americans arriving in Canada sense familiarity first: similar language, recognizable stores, parallel skylines rising above clean, orderly streets. Canadians crossing south encounter a comparable ease. The surface resemblance can feel almost disarming, as though two societies share the same rhythm. But the differences emerge not in architecture or accent alone, rather in atmosphere. Americans often notice a softer public tone in Canadian cities. Conversations in cafes tend to unfold with measured restraint. Public disagreements rarely escalate into theatrical confrontation. Canadians, in turn, often perceive a heightened intensity in American environments, a sharper edge in ambition, a visible pride in personal achievement, a sense that identity is frequently declared rather than implied. In Canada, collective responsibility is subtly woven into daily life. Public spaces feel like shared extensions of private conscience. Many Canadians speak about healthcare, education, and civic duty not as ideological battlegrounds but as communal agreements. Americans, shaped by a national narrative centered on independence and self-determination, often approach these same themes through the lens of individual freedom. The contrast is not loud, yet it colors policy debates, workplace culture, and even casual conversation. The pace of interaction differs as well. In many American cities, time moves with urgency. Professional ambition is worn openly, sometimes proudly. Success stories are told with confident clarity. Canadians tend to temper accomplishment with understatement. Modesty operates as a social lubricant, smoothing potential friction. Where Americans may celebrate distinction, Canadians often emphasize balance. Even humor reveals subtle divergence. American wit frequently carries bold exaggeration, confident punchlines delivered with certainty. Canadian humor leans toward self-deprecation, irony folded gently into commentary. The laughter may sound similar, yet its emotional temperature differs. National mythology reinforces these patterns. The United States often frames itself as an experiment driven by visionaries, pioneers, and risk-takers. Canada's narrative speaks more quietly of negotiation, compromise, and coexistence across vast geography and linguistic diversity. These founding stories echo through classrooms, news cycles, and family conversations, shaping expectations about authority and dissent. In everyday interactions, these distinctions crystallize. An American workplace meeting may pulse with assertive proposals and rapid debate. A Canadian meeting often unfolds with careful turn-taking and deliberate consensus building. Neither approach is inherently superior, each reflects deeply rooted cultural assumptions about voice and harmony. Over time, exposure to the neighboring country subtly reshapes perspective. Americans spending years in Canada often describe an internal slowing, a recalibration of urgency. Canadians immersed in American environments frequently adopt a sharper articulation of personal goals. The shift is gradual, almost imperceptible, like seasonal light changing across a familiar landscape. What appears at first as two nearly identical societies reveals itself as a study in tone, one projecting outward with confident volume, the other radiating steadiness through restraint. The border remains physically modest, but culturally it holds a quiet tension that continues to shape how millions on both sides understand ambition, responsibility, and belonging. Beneath policy and posture lies a quieter divergence in emotional climate. Many Americans are raised within a framework that celebrates decisive self-definition. Personal identity is often expressed through career trajectory, political conviction, or visible lifestyle choices. Confidence is encouraged early, reinforced in classrooms that reward participation and workplaces that favor initiative. In Canada, identity frequently unfolds with more subtle gradation. Social belonging is less commonly asserted through bold declaration and more often signaled through consideration, patience, and attentiveness to shared space. Public discourse reflects this tonal contrast. American media landscapes tend to amplify strong opinion and polarizing debate. The volume of commentary mirrors a culture comfortable with confrontation as a mechanism for progress. Canadian discourse, while equally complex, often carries a moderated cadence. Disagreement exists, yet it is frequently framed within a vocabulary of compromise. The difference is not an absence of passion, but a divergence in how passion is displayed. Seasonal rhythms also play a role in shaping collective temperament. Long Canadian winters cultivate habits of preparation and endurance. Communities develop rituals of warmth, neighborhood gatherings, quiet hospitality, deliberate planning for the months ahead. Americans, living across a wider climatic spectrum, often embody a cultural elasticity. From the relentless motion of major metropolitan centers to sunlit coastal regions, there is a sense of perpetual forward momentum. This environmental variety reinforces a narrative of boundless possibility. In social settings, these patterns become visible. At a dinner table in Toronto or Vancouver, conversation may circle gently, each voice offered space. Expressions of disagreement are softened by qualifying phrases, an instinctive cushioning that preserves equilibrium. In New York, Chicago, or Dallas, exchanges may accelerate quickly, ideas overlapping, enthusiasm layered atop enthusiasm. Directness signals engagement rather than hostility. Even expressions of patriotism diverge in tone. American national pride often manifests through visible symbols, ceremonial displays, and emphatic affirmation of founding ideals. Canadian pride is frequently expressed through quieter acknowledgments, healthcare systems, multicultural policy, environmental stewardship. The sentiment exists on both sides, yet its volume differs. These subtleties influence workplace hierarchy. Americans frequently respond to leadership that projects vision with clarity and urgency. Risk-taking is framed as virtuous, failure as an acceptable stepping stone toward reinvention. Canadians often gravitate toward leaders who emphasize consultation and steady guidance. Stability can be valued over spectacle. Progress may appear incremental, but it is carefully sustained. Over extended time, individuals living across the border begin to absorb unfamiliar habits. Americans residing in Canada often report a growing appreciation for deliberation, discovering comfort in consensus. Canadians immersed in American cities frequently develop a sharper tolerance for competition, learning to articulate ambition more directly. The transformation does not erase origin, rather, it layers new reflexes atop old instincts. In this gradual exchange, the two societies reveal themselves not as opposites, but as variations in emphasis, one amplifying assertion, the other refining restraint. The proximity of geography masks the depth of difference, yet daily life quietly reveals how contrasting values can coexist along the same horizon, shaping two distinct interpretations of what it means to participate in a nation. Over years of proximity, these contrasts begin to influence not only behavior, but perception itself. Americans who settle in Canadian cities often describe an unexpected recalibration of urgency. Professional drive remains, yet it softens at the edges. Evenings feel less tethered to performance. Success is still pursued, though its public display becomes more measured. Canadians who relocate to American metropolitan centers frequently experience an expansion of personal narrative. Ambition becomes more openly spoken. Goals are articulated without the instinctive preface of modesty. The environment rewards visibility, and adaptation follows. This exchange reshapes daily rituals. In Canada, public transit rides are often marked by quiet respect for shared silence. In the United States, the same commute may pulse with audible conversation, phone calls, and energetic motion. Grocery store interactions, customer service exchanges, even the choreography of waiting in line reveals subtle expectations about personal space and emotional volume. Canadians often default to apology as social lubrication, smoothing minor friction before it sharpens. Americans may interpret the same moment as an opportunity for swift clarification rather than preemptive regret. Civic identity also evolves differently under prolonged exposure. Americans living north of the border sometimes develop a deeper appreciation for institutional continuity, observing how social programs function as collective anchors. Canadians living in the United States often become more aware of individual leverage within vast economic systems, recognizing how personal initiative can rapidly alter trajectory. Each environment teaches its own lesson about agency. Yet neither culture is static. Generational shifts blur older distinctions. Urban Canadians grow more comfortable with assertive entrepreneurship. Young Americans increasingly value work-life balance and communal accountability. The border remains, but the dialogue across it grows more layered. Shared media, intertwined economies, and constant movement ensure that influence flows in both directions. Still, when the noise of headlines fades, the tonal difference persists. In the United States, public life often carries a brightness that demands recognition. In Canada, civic culture tends to glow with steadier light, less concerned with spectacle. Both societies prize freedom and fairness, yet they calibrate those ideals differently. One leans toward declaration, the other toward deliberation. Standing along that nearly invisible boundary, it becomes clear that cultural distance is not measured in miles. It is felt in cadence, in conversational rhythm, in how a nation imagines responsibility and reward. The landscape may appear continuous, forests blending into plains, lakes stretching without interruption. But beneath that seamless geography lives a quiet divergence, two neighboring experiments in democracy, each reflecting a distinct understanding of ambition, humility, and the art of living together.